email from High School Dean Psc Murphy, and also Kim Cronin from the Mass General Hospital. The HOSA organization, Health Organization of Students of America, we have a very active group in Westford, sponsored a blood drive prior to the vacation. And MGH was extraordinarily pleased to see that there were 55 attendees, 17 for one reason or another were screened out, but they had 38 blood donors, which at this time of year, and actually any time of year, is very important. So our students doing wonderful things throughout the entire year. We're very proud of them. And I want to thank the organization for sponsoring that blood drive, and also MGH for participating. From the Miller School, Donna Pobuck has let us know that the staff raised $400 for 10 needy families, and also collected numerous boxes of food items to present to the Westford Food Pantry prior to the holiday. And so we're very proud of our students, our staff, and our families for their social presence and their caring in the community. So I wanted to keep it a little bit brief tonight. I want to echo what you just said, Gloria. Also, Happy New Year. Glad our families and our students are back from vacation. I want to thank those families also who went out of state and who are being very responsible in quarantining. I happened to speak with a family today who traveled out of state, and they understand that when they came back, they were going to have to quarantine. Children will be back in school shortly, but I want to thank them for doing the responsible thing. And that's it for my brief update tonight.
Great. Carrie?
Sure. Well, today the new World Language Curriculum Frameworks, the draft, was released from DESE. So we're going to start channeling our energy toward studying those. And right now, because it's in draft form, it's available to us with the expectation that we provide some comments to give input and feedback. With these new frameworks, in addition to acquiring linguistic and cultural proficiency, there's a real emphasis on using the target language to promote equity, global awareness, multicultural awareness. So it really falls in line with where we're going and what our vision is for students of Westford as well. So we're happy that the focus, while our teachers very much had this focus in mind, it's beyond just the language and even broader than the culture, the target language. So we are excited to learn more about those. And then I'm sure at some point you'll be hearing a little more detail, because it may have some budget impact in the likely FY23 budget development. And also, I'm not sure if Bill would like to touch upon this a little bit later, but we did want to mention our structured learning time that was recently released from DESE, and it was released to us prior to the public release, does in fact indicate that we are not meeting the newly required 35 hours over the course of 10 days of live, whether it be in person or remote synchronous instruction. That's something that had come to us in middle of December, which was not part of our the information that we had when we were building our hybrid model. So it is something that we will have to address, like many other school districts who are not meeting those 35 hours over the course of 10 days. And again, it's the average. So it's not student by student. So we do have some thoughts. We are going to be meeting with the WEA board tomorrow, because any sort of change does impact our memorandum of agreement that was created and agreed upon over the summer. And we do believe that there are some steps that we can take that will provide more opportunities for face-to-face time with teachers. However, we think that we'll be able to do that without overhauling our model at all. While this model doesn't work for everybody, we do feel as though we've found a balance in developing the model. And now that people have kind of gotten their schedules structured, because we know that that was very difficult for families at the beginning. We do think we have a nice balance going right now, and we are not looking to make any major changes, but certainly need to make steps toward meeting those other hours. Bill, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
Well, one of the requirements that we will be addressing tomorrow with the consult committee of the teachers union is that we're to have direct contact with all students every day, and so that will require some changes. But Carrie's been working hard on it with the principals, and the reason we don't have specifics tonight for you, but we will in a follow-up meeting, is because it requires discussion with the union. So we know what we have to do. We're very willing to work on it, and we will let you know of our outcome with the union and our meeting with the principals in terms of how we best meet it. As Carrie said, she has some great ideas that the principals have shared with us, and we feel confident that we'll be able to meet the new requirements. And as you said, Carrie, it is difficult because these just came out prior to the vacation period in terms of the specific requirements. And so, we haven't had much time, nor have many other school systems, and there are a number who are in the same position that we are to address this. So we are addressing it. We'll meet tomorrow, and we'll have certainly a more specific update for you at an upcoming meeting.
And we are not looking to do anything so drastic that parents will have to reshuffle any sort of child care that they've already established. We, however, any tweaks that are made, we will certainly provide advance notice so that people can plan accordingly.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification. I know this came up right before the holidays, and it is disconcerting when I think the state drops additional requirements. It kind of feels like they moved the goalposts, and this model was built over the summer, and this is kind of a brand new set of requirements being dropped. But I also very much want to appreciate the WEA's role in this process, and I want to give you, as the administration and the WEA, time to have those important conversations. But with that in mind, does anyone from the committee have any questions at this point about this, or shall we hold that for our subsequent update at our next meeting? Okay. I think that your explanation set the groundwork for where we are and where we're headed. So let's have further discussion on this next time. Thank you for all the efforts in moving this forward. Always new. It's a new year with new challenges. Did you have other things and updates, Carrie, or
just all set?
Okay, great. Then we're on to Ingrid.
Well, as you know, we're already in the middle of budget season, in the sense that we're working diligently putting together a draft of FY22 budget, meeting with various departments, and Bill's going to embark on, and our team, to meet with the schools and school staff and voluntary meetings to get input, and we'll be going over a proposed timeline, I think, later in the meeting. And as we all know, the stimulus bill was finally signed, and it did provide $53 billion for K-12 education. Other than Psc contacting us to say that all funding that's already been allocated, the deadline's now moved to December 30th, 2021. That's the extent of the information. I'd hoped that maybe they would have given us a little more that I could report to you today, but I'll keep you updated. When we do anticipate receiving some funds, we just really have no idea how much and what uses that they will require that we spend the money on. We're crossing our fingers that some of the funds can be used for lost revenue. So cross your fingers with us. And I think, and then what I'd like to do, if it's all right with Gloria and you, the committee, that at your next meeting, I'll give you a fiscal update where we are this year. I think it's important for you to kind of have a frame of reference of where we are and where we hope to go through the rest of 21 before we really embark on the 22 budget.
Gloria, can I just remind the committee that we do have a purchasing hold on right now as a hedge against uncertainties during this fiscal year, but also as a mechanism of trying to leverage our financial position and the town's financial position for next year also.
Thank you for keeping us updated. We know there's so many uncertainties to this year, and knowing that there might be additional funding coming of it or how it can be used, we will wait and see, and as Ingrid suggested, cross our fingers that we have some flexibility in how that's used. And yeah, I think an update of where we are in this current fiscal year at our next meeting would be fantastic. It's a good marker about where we are as we're entering the budget planning for next year. That sounds great. Any questions at this point? All right, not seeing any hands yet. So we'll go on to school committee update. Does anyone have an update other than hopefully that they had a happy and healthy new year? Avery.
I just want to remind, we're talking about finances. The finance subcommittee will be meeting Friday morning. I will be posting an agenda shortly. We moved it. We didn't feel that a Monday morning after the break was the most opportune time. So we did take advantage and move it to Friday morning. And because Bill brought up a blood drive, I just like to say that Rodenbush will be hosting a blood drive for one of our 8th graders at Stony Brook, who's currently at Children's Hospital fighting cancer. And so we will be offering a blood drive for Allie on January 24th.
Thank you for that update, Avery. And we wish her and her family good thoughts and positive energy in their direction. Any other school committee updates other than items that are coming up on our agenda later? Valerie.
Can we, I don't know if this is the right place to do it but can we, or offline, but just start talking about maybe rechecking in with some tours? I know when we toured in September that there was a lot of like, come back and see once the students are in the buildings. I would really appreciate that.
We'll be glad to do that. It's always beneficial for you to see what is going on in the schools directly. So we'll do that right away.
Great.
Preferably on Pod A week. Just for childcare juggling.
Okay. All right, just send me an email reminding me of that, Valerie.
We'll take a poll on Pod A or Pod B weeks. Anything else for school committee updates? Okay, well, I know you're just coming back, but do our students, Hannah or Brian, do either of you have updates?
I do not have any new updates at the time, but I think students are settling back in. There's obviously a lot of stress around going back, but I think everyone's getting back to a normal schedule now. So
I hope you and everybody else enjoyed a little bit of downtime, a little bit of family time, a little bit of playtime, and ready to ramp back up. All right. Then moving, let me double check. Sorry, I need to check in on Airtable. I'll get my Airtable update in a second. I'm not seeing any comments so far, but I may not be fully updated. So I will check in on public comment, but we'll move on to Bill and your COVID update.
Yes, we have been tracking COVID numbers throughout the vacation period. We updated the dashboard today. We presently have 19 students who have tested positive and who are out of school at the present time, along with 4 staff members. In terms of close contacts, we have 25 students who are close contacts and are quarantining, and only 4 staff system-wide who are in close contact. Maybe a little bit early right now in terms of the impact of families getting together, friends getting together over the vacation period. We may see an uptick in that, but numbers are remaining relatively stable at the present time. DPH numbers, which indicate townwide numbers, show a little bit lower positivity test rate in the town than the last reporting period, and a little bit lower average daily incidence. Hospitalizations, according to the DPH, because I look at that data every day, hospitalizations are up. The number of cases in young children through age 40 has dramatically increased across the state. And the average age of a COVID patient has dropped from about 60 down to, and it varies from time to time, but down around the low 40s in terms of age right now. So that we're seeing a lot of cases in those particular periods of age. So we will keep updating the dashboard. I'll keep you informed of any trends. We checked with the principals throughout the vacation week to make sure that we had staffing and the capacity to staff, and that worked out very well. We had a few staff out at one of our middle schools, but I talked with Chris Chu, and Chris said he was certainly able to cover that. Other than that, every other school seems to be in good shape in terms of the ability to cover classes and instructional responsibilities.
Thank you for that update. I know there were some questions. I see a hand. Sean.
Bill, were there a lot of districts who ended up staying closed for the first 2 weeks going back from break?
There were some. I can't give you the exact number. Some wanted to close for the first 2 weeks, excuse me, and some for a period of 2 or 3 or 4 days after the vacation period. But if the committee would like, I'll gather that data to find out. I can at least do it for the Merrimack Valley Superintendents Association and give you somewhat of a sample of what different districts are doing. But I don't think a lot of them have taken that time off.
And that might be helpful. So thank you, Bill. But just as a quick follow-up, that was never suggested by the COVID committee, correct? Or the advisory committee?
No, I reviewed that with the COVID advisory committee about 2.5 weeks ago, because the administrators just prior to Christmas and the vacation period felt that because of the uncertainty coming out of the vacation period with the incidence of COVID cases or close contacts, we might be in a difficult position in terms of staffing. That did not turn out to be the case, and the COVID advisory committee advised against that, because we've talked repeatedly about wanting to keep students in school as much as possible.
Gloria, if I can,
Yep.
I'm not sure that it's required that Bill put it together. MASC has gathered that information, has been sharing it in a thread about returning to school and the advantages, and it showed all of the school districts and what they had chosen to do. Some stayed hybrid and put the high school remote. As Bill said, it really varied, but I believe Tracy published the Google document that you can see all the districts and what they've done.
Oh, great.
Since we're talking about it, maybe we can add that to the documents for today's meeting.
I just put it in the, I put a link in the chat, and I'll add it to Airtable as well.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Great, fantastic. Any other questions? I know I had had an inquiry from a staff member and parent concerning all of the news out of the UK about this new variant. My understanding is we have not seen it in Massachusetts at this time. I'm sure our public health officials are tracking that. I know it's something we're aware of, but I think there is some anxiety out there. So I did want to convey the question, and I'm assuming that's something that we'll consult with our public health officials about and with that COVID advisory committee.
Yes, regardless of any mutation, and every virus tends to have mutating strands. The buildings are still being disinfected every night. The buses and the vans are being disinfected. We're doing everything possible to make sure we continue to provide a healthy environment for our students and our staff.
Well, and it sounds like our system is working, so I'm glad we've still got it all up and running. Valerie, did I see a hand?
Yeah, just another quick plug to try including the totals in the dashboard updates. It's kind of hard to see kind of week over week trends, or if we're seeing increases by just the update. Thank you.
Well, I'll do that, Valerie.
All right. Any other COVID-related questions? All righty. Next up, we've got an update from our Superintendent Search Subcommittee. Alicia?
Hi, everyone, and hopefully my Wi-Fi stays strong for this and I don't go full robot voice. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you all can see the presentation we have tonight. So, hold on. Yep. Sorry about that. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay. So tonight we're talking about the preliminary screening committee, which is the next step in the superintendent search. What is the preliminary screening committee? I thought this was necessary to review because I think we've had some confusion as to what the preliminary screening committee will do. So the preliminary screening committee, and I'm going to start calling it the PSC so that I stop having to say that over and over again. It's a small group of volunteers who will review the initial pool of applicants for the position and narrow them down to between 3 and 5 finalists. I'm going to jump to my last point because I think this is where the confusion comes in. The PSC is not a hiring committee. As a matter of fact, by law, they have to send us at least 2 applicants, and they usually send 3 to 5 because the school committee has final hiring authority. So as my daughter described it recently, this is sort of like a funnel. This group is going to take the wide pool of applicants and narrow them down for us. So applications for the PSC were open to parents, staff, community members, town employees, town board members. Once chosen, they will be trained by and work under the guidance of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees representatives. So the criteria that we used to create the cross-section is we were looking for volunteers to identify what groups they represent and then share a letter of intent detailing their personal experience and what they could offer the group. They were also asked ahead of time to make sure that they would be available for all of the dates that the PSC would need, because once we get going, it can't really stop the process and re-impanel. You would end up throwing the timeline off for everyone who had applied. So in addition to the stakeholder groups, applicants were also sought to represent diverse and inclusive populations of the Westford Public Schools. We were looking for people who had the ability to work as a team and have a strong interest in the future of Westford Public Schools. And this is the point where I'm going to share something that Chris said during the week. The screening committee, the Superintendent Search Subcommittee is made up of myself, Chris Sanders, and Sean Kelly. And Chris at one point said we really had an embarrassment of riches when it came to volunteers for this position. We had 35 people apply and share letters of interest, and we were narrowing down to a group of roughly 12 to 13 people. So I won't read through the proposed PSC member categories, but you can see here that what we're looking for is a cross-section of school committee, central office, principal, teachers representing various levels and parents, and then representatives from outside the district itself. So our next slide is the beginning of our proposed slate. Here we have the 3 search subcommittee members. That's myself, Sean Kelly, and Chris Sanders. From our central office, we put forward Kerry Cleary. From our building principal applicants, we put forward Jim Antonelli. From our elementary, middle, and high school staff, we have a nice cross-section here representing ELL teachers and digital learning specialists and classroom teachers from across the district. Our elementary parents, again, here we have a cross-section of parents in overlapping categories. We have members of the diversity, equity, and inclusion team. We have people who have backgrounds in human resources and management and financial backgrounds. And then from our municipal side, we have Tom Clay, who is currently a select board member and a former member of the school committee, and also serves on the Town and School Safety Task Force. Our community member at large, we have chosen Ellen Hardy. So the community member at large category, what we were looking for here was someone who could represent a broader swath of the community that was not deeply steeped, as Dorothy put it, in the school district. So we're not looking for someone who is currently a member of the school committee or currently has children. We wanted someone from outside that group. And certainly Ellen, who is widely known and deeply respected and a former town moderator and a small business owner, we felt she could really represent that. And then our last category is a recent alum, and here we have Ariella Fleischer. And apologies if I pronounce anyone's name incorrectly. I promise to get it right by the time we get rolling. So for this group, we had been asked by the students to try to represent the student voice. Having a current student sit on the PSC is not necessarily feasible, so we had reached out and tried to find a recent alum, and Ariella is our recent alum. So the next steps for the PSC. After the school committee discusses and approves a list of volunteers tonight, they will be notified via email. The virtual training with the MASC starts on February 3rd. And in that virtual training, they will receive all of the information they need about how the process will move forward, rundown on open meeting law and executive session rules, things like that. The PSC will then receive the applications and begin reviewing them. We will meet in February and narrow down and interview the first round of applicants. From those applicants, we will then choose, again, at least 2, but approximately 3 to 5 finalists, which will then be presented to the school committee with a target date of March 1st. And at that point, the PSC is done. But then the next steps in the search. So the week of March 15th, the school committee will virtually meet with the stakeholder groups of the finalist districts. The Westford stakeholder groups will meet with the finalists. That means the public will get a chance to meet the finalists. And then the school committee will vote to appoint the position on March 18th. That's our target date. So I hope I've given you all an overview of how this process went. Honestly, it was very hard to take such an amazing group of people down to this small number. And we really tried to approach it from the perspective of we wanted positive inclusion. We weren't looking to exclude. We were trying to build the best team we could. And we were trying to look at Westford's past, Westford's present, Westford's future, and as many stakeholder groups as we could find to build collaboration and consensus for this very important next step for the Westford Public Schools. So on that note, I will stop sharing my screen if I can get out of there. Let's see if I can do that. There we go. And I'm stopping sharing, and I will open it to questions.
Well, I'll just start with Alicia. Thank you for to you and Sean and Chris for keeping this process moving over the holiday break. Welcome to our guest panelist this evening, Dorothy Presser from MASC, who is helping assist us with this process. And thank you really to everyone. I mean, there was an extraordinary group of applicants for this committee. The fact that our community had so many people who were willing to step up and invest the time to volunteer to be part of this process is really quite exciting and something I think we should all be very proud of. So thank you for the hard work that's happened so far, and questions from the committee. I think I saw some hands already. Avery?
Yeah, yeah. So I just had a question about the recent alum. It sounds like that was a decision made kind of on the fly, and I appreciate that sometimes we have to make those decisions. Was there any concern, or I have concern, that wasn't an advertised position, and it seemed like people had to apply to a specific slot, not just to be considered? And did we have a wide enough catchment for that position to make a decision that represents the students, the current students and recent alum alike?
So in part of the application process there was a landing page where you had to check your categories, all that applied, and then you sent us a letter of interest. Under those categories for checking all that applied, recent alum was an option. So you could self-identify as a recent alum. And several weeks ago in the search committee meetings, we started talking about adding alumni, and we have put out as many emails as possible. It's been on the town webpage, our webpage. We've sent out, people are sick of emails from us at this point when we're not done yet. But we did only have one applicant for that position. So it was part of the process where you could self-identify as a recent alum, and only one person did and only one person applied.
What is our definition of recent alum? Do we have like a cutoff, or do we have, you know, the last 3 to 5 years, or?
No, there was no cutoff because, again, there was only one applicant.
And does the selection group actually interview, or do they go strictly by paperwork?
So Dorothy could speak to this more clearly. Dorothy, if you want to explain what happens once the PSC is impaneled, please.
So I'm not clear on the question. Is Avery asking whether the subcommittee interviewed the people who put in their letters, or are you asking about the process going forward?
The process going forward, does this...
Oh, yes, absolutely. The PSC looks at all the applications and decides who they want to bring in to interview as semifinalists.
Okay, and so that would be more than the 3 to 5 that they move forward.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, okay. Yes. The other thing to add is that in the list of what happens after the PSC is done and names the finalists, in that process, there will also be interviews by the school committee as well as the site visits by the school committee.
And Alicia, the recent alum, we added it when, because I know the initial call did not call for a recent alum when we put out the initial calling all volunteers.
Correct. The original letter did not include a recent alum in the original letter. There were several times when we resent it, but it did not specifically outline a recent alum. When Hannah did speak at the last meeting and talked about student involvement, we brought up that at the search subcommittee meetings, we had been discussing adding a recent alum to the crowd.
Okay. I just have trouble appointing someone when we haven't truly advertised in the best way we can for that slot.
Other comments, questions, concerns? Valerie?
I loved reading the letters and looking through the list of people. I can see kind of both sides, right, of kind of forming buckets and then kind of putting people into those buckets, as opposed to looking at people as multidimensional, covering different categories, and then trying to look at whose voices are we trying to represent, and then kind of getting to the end and adding more. Or so, I mean, I think there's both sides of those methods, so I can appreciate how hard that is to kind of have specific buckets and feel like we left maybe some people on the list that everybody was well qualified and would be great, But it's hard to see some names that, you know, I think would be great voices to have, but maybe their bucket was already filled. So just that struggle between filling a bucket versus looking at the people. But I did just want to say that it's something that's like, we use the word elementary all the time, and it never really sinks into me that it's covering 6 grade levels, whereas middle covers 3 grade levels and high school covers 4 grade levels. So it really just hit me in this particular exercise that we have 1 staff person and 1 parent covering those 6 grade levels. And I'm pleasantly surprised that both of those choices are from the K-2. I know Danielle has a child in K-2, and Mrs. Coulter is at NAB. So I'm pleasantly surprised that those kind of line up with that, because I do think that's an important voice as we look forward to such an important decision moving forward. But with the flip of that, I wonder if we're kind of missing a 3 to 5 voice. And so just in hindsight, I guess my feedback would be, I would have felt a little bit more balanced to break that out and have a K-2 and a 3 to 5 seat for those groups. And so I'm just kind of, I guess that's hindsight, and not now, but to just kind of move forward how we feel the 3 to 5 voice would be brought in moving forward.
Well, if I could speak to that, when we're talking about groups that overlap, I'm a 5th grade parent and I will be present in the room. So my children are 5th grade and 8th grade, so I cover 2 categories. Chris's children are high school, Sean's child is in preschool. So in and amongst all of the parents and staff, we also have overlapping categories where we have staff who are also parents in the district, and we have school committee members who are also parents in the district. So absolutely 100%, this was one of the hardest decisions we had to make, and the process was long and involved. We spent an hour and a half, after spending weeks with the letters themselves, we spent an hour and a half discussing the intricacies of trying to represent as many voices as possible. And we want to do that with a group that is not unwieldy, that can't make a decision. But we also want to try and get as many voices in there as possible. And I want to remind everyone again that this is literally the funnel. This group is going to take the pool of applicants, which can be anywhere from 30 to 60, is my understanding, and bring them down to a smaller group, interview, and then bring them down to send us finalists. So we've had feedback through the forums and the survey all the way up till this point, and that was what we created the leadership profile with. That's what we created our application with. Now we have the screening committee, which will then narrow it down, and they're a cross-section representing as many groups as we possibly could in the district. Yes, we did leave a lot of names on the cutting room floor, but that's simply because we can't impanel 35 people. We'd never get anywhere. Once they're finalized, there will be many public meetings where people from all grade levels and all stakeholder groups and all of the staff will then get to meet the finalists, and there will be interviews. So this part of the process, I think we're sort of getting stuck at this part of the process for some people, in that this is not a hiring committee. This is merely a funnel. And there was all of this input before, and there will be all of this input after. This is just one step in the process. So I would like to think that we, through the surveys and the forums and everything else, and then all of the meetings that will happen after, we will continue to have opportunities for people to weigh in. And clearly we're limited by whoever applied to the PSC. And, you know, we did put very careful thought into making sure we were making as many of those Venn diagrams as we possibly could.
If I could just add, I mean, I think you've said this, but I'm going to reiterate it for Avery and Valerie's questions. And that is to say, yes to both of you. Like we wrestled with the same things, and recognize that trying to strike that balance between breadth of members, inclusivity of different categories, finding the right people. And yeah, we would have loved to have had all 35 people, because honestly, every single person would have added something. So yeah, I don't think there's any perfect formula, but like Alicia said, I think this committee will be well poised to help us through that next step of the process, so that we can bring the full committee our finalists in a couple of months.
Yeah, I can imagine the difficulty of trying to build this team. And while I know it was presented to us in the slideshow as that people are representing certain categories, because I think the search committee was very respectful of making sure that all of those categories were represented. The individuals in those slots are multidimensional beings. I believe if I read the letters correctly, I think our middle school and high school parents could have been swapped because they're both. They have both middle school and high school students. And certainly, as Alicia mentioned, there were numerous staff members and school committee members and our municipal rep that also have students and are also parents in the district. So, many of us wear multiple hats. The question I had, and perhaps this requires a little too much crystal ball, but I'm also trying to envision how the process plays out, is there any typical number of applicants for a superintendent position that a district might see? And is there any optimal number of semifinalists, I think is what you called them, Dorothy, that semifinalists that the PSC would interview?
So you want me to go ahead and answer? So right now, typically we're seeing around 30 applications for a position. 60 would be great. But that, that a few years ago, maybe we would have seen that. Now we see around 30. I would say that typically the PSC decides to email, or not to interview maybe 10 to 12 of those applicants before they narrow it down.
Other questions about process, procedure, steps going forward? Valerie.
At what point will we schedule and advertise for those public meetings? Do we have to have finalists and check? I mean, it seems silly to kind of schedule them before we have finalists and check their schedules, but obviously we want those meetings to have a ton of community input. So advertising and scheduling them way in advance seems helpful too. How does that get balanced?
So generally those don't get scheduled until you know who your finalists are. Just because there's a matter of, coordinating their schedules with your schedule. We do have within the timeline certain weeks set out for those visits to happen, but the actual time of those visits takes some coordination once we know who the people are that we'll be scheduling.
And would those kind of mirror the kind of format we did for the focus groups, the different, I'm blanking on the
stakeholder. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's typically how it happens. Typically, of course, we're doing it in person, so we're trying to, go to locations where people can, interact. So there's certainly flexibility there if you just want to, slot some times and anybody can come, or you can divide it up sort of by the different groups. I saw Hannah's hand up. So just one of the things that we did talk about was making sure that when we have the finalists come, we do schedule a time that's just for students to be able to interact with the finalists.
And logistically, this might be more for Gloria than Dorothy. Are those public meetings posted that we're all welcome to, or those are?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump into Gloria. It depends somewhat on the stakeholder group. If they're meeting with teachers or if they're meeting with administrators, that would not be something that would be public and posted. It's when they're meeting with parents and community groups and other groups like that. Those would be at least, if not posted as a public meeting, at least the meeting time. And not a public meeting that requires a posting and so forth, like the stakeholder groups didn't. But certainly those times would be publicized broadly.
Also, I have an email that will be ready to go to NINA tomorrow morning, where we can change what the landing page on the district website looks like, so that it has the time frame of those weeks on it, and says, you know, here's what's happening right now. Tune in soon. More information will be coming, but please watch for this time frame will be when the meetings are scheduled. And then once we have the meeting scheduled, we can publish those directly and then send blast emails again.
Okay, other comments, questions? Well, then I'll put a motion on the floor and we'll see if there's any follow-up, but I would move that we accept the recommended slate as proposed by the search subcommittee and appoint those 14 individuals to the preliminary screening committee.
Second.
And any further discussions, comments, questions prior to the vote? Okay. Vote to Chris.
Aye.
Avery.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And I. So I believe I got everybody and my dancer on my Zoom screen. So that would be unanimous. Thank you very much to the search subcommittee. Thank you, Dorothy Presser, for joining us again. And really thank you to everyone who applied for this and volunteered their time, and to everyone who will be serving on the search committee and helping us with this process. Thank you very much. Barring any other questions, I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you. Next, we had a DEI update, and the floor is back to you, Bill. It's 2021 and you're on mute, Bill.
Still stuck in 2020, I think. I'll be talking with Alicia this week and to set our next agenda. But some of the things we're looking at right now in terms of trying to accomplish for the budget season, but also moving forward to the remainder of the year, is talking with the leadership team this week about devoting some time in the after-school faculty meetings each month to diversity, equity, and inclusion issues, although we would want perhaps some specific topics so that it's not sort of ad hoc discussions, that we really carve out some pointed discussions to make sure that we're communicating a consistent message across the district. We're looking to see if we can budget maybe some summer work that I think is critical, that needs to be done. Down the road, not for the next fiscal year, but down the road, I think we need to look at, as a school system, either a part-time or full-time coordinator. And maybe we talk to the town about that also in our joint discussions with the town's DEI committee, because, you know, the old saying, if everyone's in charge, no one's in charge. Someone really, this is an important enough effort that someone really needs to take a leadership role in terms of what our efforts will look like in the school system, but also in the town as a whole. We're going to look at how to make our libraries more inclusive and diverse in terms of authorship. We're going to talk to the high school staff in terms of books that might be more appropriate, might be more balanced in terms of equity and diversity in the school system. And so that's just a few of the things we're also putting together. So a process booklet, a subcommittee in terms of the methodology for students and staff to report incidents of alleged bias or racism, and working with Attorney Tom Nuttall in the development of that also. So a lot of work to be done. It's hard to believe we're already in January and the school year is going to be gone before we know it, but we're going to keep pushing forward as aggressively as possible.
Any questions at this point? Such an important group and process. I know there's so many things happening this year, but very heartened to see that that group is moving forward. So Bill, please convey our thanks to them as well. I know so many staff members are involved in that group, and there's been so many extra burdens on our staff this year in just the complexity of our current hybrid teaching model. So their continued help for this effort is just really appreciated.
Yeah, I will say, and I'd love to hear Alicia's perspective. The group is extraordinarily passionate about what they want to do and see happen. And you know, Alicia, I think you probably have the same feeling.
I do. I definitely do. Not just our staff, but we also have students involved and we have some parents involved, and it is a phenomenal group. And I have to say, there's a lot of progress happening.
Okay. Thank you for the update. And I guess the next update is also yours, Bill, and it's enrollment projections.
Yes, so I want to give you the updated enrollment projections for the 21-22 school year. I did draft a memo for you to allow you to see what the nexus of the numbers is. We did check the number of registrations to the October 1st enrollment, the registrations from the prior March. We did not see a decline in the number of students on the assumption that maybe some preferred to hold their children back from kindergarten because of the pandemic. In fact, you know, we've grown in terms of enrollment. So that, interestingly, I did an analysis over the last 5 years of the cohort survival ratio between those children born and 5 years later, the kindergarten enrollment. And over that 5-year period, the cohort ratio was 1.67, meaning for every child born in Westford 5 years earlier, prior to actual kindergarten age enrollment, 1.67 children show up in kindergarten, which is an indicator of, you know, in-migration, out-migration factor, increasing population of school-age children in the town. But as George Murray has always said, it's the kindergarten and grade 1 numbers that are the most difficult to predict with any significant reliability. So this is our best estimate in terms of enrollment that you see in the numbers that I presented. I did speak with Courtney also to get a little bit more precise with the preschool enrollments. She thought that some of my enrollments were just a little bit strong, and has projected. Now this is important for us to recognize. That total number of 99 is full-time equivalencies. Now, if you keep in mind that one full-time equivalency could occur from 4 children having 0.25 full-time equivalencies, what Courtney and I have agreed upon is that number will probably shade up in terms of actual head count, keeping in mind that's full-time equivalency, but the head count could be up as high as 110, 115 or so. We're going to have to keep a careful eye on that. We don't know that with certainty right now, but we will keep informing you of any preschool trends, okay? Because keeping in mind that those children do occupy spaces in our 3 K-2 schools, okay? Continuing on, Chris, if you could scroll down a little bit more. We have adjusted for, it's interesting because some of the principals didn't think I was strong enough in terms of the numbers of returning home school children. So I adjusted that by a little bit greater number so that we have incorporated into this most recent revision the number of children who are currently being homeschooled, specifically related to the pandemic, okay? The parents have made that conscious choice not to send them to the public school system given the COVID-19 situation. In all grade levels beyond grade beyond the kindergarten, I've used historical trends of George Murray's cohort survival ratios in the projected report. And so projecting 4,717 students for next year. The only thing that remains for me to do, and I'll do that over the course of this week, is to determine the number of sections at each grade level in the elementary schools, because we want to make sure we get that correctly, and make sure we don't underestimate or overestimate. So be speaking with the principals about the numbers of sections based on the projected enrollments, and we'll complete that part of the enrollment projection after this week. I'll be glad to answer any of your questions.
All right. Questions from the committee? Valerie.
Yeah, sorry. The enrollment is like brand new to me, and I it's kind of confusing for the first year to try to wrap your head around it, right? Like, where does 1.67 come from? I have no idea. And you, in one of the memos, you mentioned George Murray's recent report. Was that in the meeting packet? I don't think I saw that.
No, George has turned the enrollment projections over to me this year.
Oh.
He did it for about 25 to 30 years, never charged us a dime, did a superb job. And Valerie, I'll be glad to spend whatever time you'd like offline explaining the derivation of the enrollment projections. You know, the 1.67 comes from analyzing the number of births 5 years prior to the number of students showing up for kindergarten over a multiple year period. So that's what you look at in terms of making your best estimate at kindergarten enrollment.
I guess my I trust that this is the way we've been doing it. I guess the marker for me would be, how has our projections lined up against actuals? Do we track that somewhere?
We track it every year, and actually it's quite good. Now, from time to time, there will be a grade level that presents an anomaly where, you know, there are 20 fewer or 20 more students than we projected, but that's really unusual. What we're finding is that a majority of the new families moving into town are enrolling children in the upper elementary levels. That we're having relatively fewer new families enroll in the K-2 grade level. So, you know, they're establishing their children's education in a community. They move to Westford for a great school system, but they tend to do that in the third or fourth or fifth grade. That's not exclusively, but that's what we've been noticing more of a trend within the last several years.
Thanks. And just one last plea or reminder or suggestion. I don't pretend to know as much as the principals do or what's involved in it, but it seemed like last year we would have been better served by having kindergarten registration start earlier. So just another kind of reminder bump to investigate if that's feasible. I know it's coming up quick.
We're discussing that right now.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Avery.
So Bill, my question is about FTK. That seems to always be a hot topic. And I see that you broke it out, and it looks like each of the 3 elementary schools will have one section of half day and the rest will be full day sections.
It appears right now one half day section. You know, could be more. We don't know that right now, but it does seem to be one half day, keeping in mind that since the state only requires half day kindergarten, we have to continue to offer that to parents.
Correct. And so it's hard to know right now how many are going to want full day or not want full day, and whether we think we can eliminate the waiting lists. I mean, that's all sort of unknown still. And I was going to say the same thing as Valerie, is the sooner we get a registration going, the sooner we can start to shift, you know, to sift all that out.
Mm-hmm. Okay. With the understanding, of course, to the public that the numbers increase, even certainly the registrations, even after the formal registration date. So, you know, it could be as much as 10, 15, 20 students after the actual registration date.
Other questions? I hate to use the word because I know it's a scary word, but Bill, do you see any need based on these projections of the need for redistricting in the near future?
I don't. It's interesting you mentioned that because I was looking at the numbers last week specifically to look at that issue. And I don't believe, and it's been interesting to me because I worked with Lucy Smith 20 years ago on the redistricting plan for elementary and middle school, and it's still held up, which is quite honestly a little bit of skill and a little bit of luck that was involved with that. And so I do not see the need for next year for any redistricting.
Everybody breathe a sigh of relief. That is really good to hear. Always wonderful to hear. Any other questions? Okay, thank you as always for keeping an eye on these numbers. They mean a lot going into budget season. And oh, nice segue. That's the next item on our agenda. So starting our discussion of our upcoming budget season.
Well, we are in the process right now of taking a look at what a level service budget might look like going into next year. As Ingrid mentioned, this week and into next week, we will be having some voluntary meetings with our staff because we want to hear directly from them. If I want to know how to improve a school system, I'm not going to read it from a book. I'm going to talk to our staff to find out for the children of Westford, what's working and what do we need to improve upon. And so we will be having those meetings. We'll be having increased leadership team meetings. We'll be having more meetings with parents. And so we're going to look at your budget priorities. We're going to extract right now what has been accomplished in the strategic plan. And as you know, the next administration will be responsible for putting together a 3-year strategic plan, which is, I believe, what you have desired, and not a 5-year, because I think that's too far out to be realistic. We're going to look at, as I said, the school improvement plans, particularly with respect to the DEI and SEL goals that they have, to see what we might be able to do in next year's budget. I know that we've talked about meetings on off Mondays, specifically to address budget issues. And we think that will be very helpful in working with the budget subcommittee to determine what are the topics so that parents know what night a specific topic is going to be discussed. And so we'll kind of map that out. I think Ingrid has put together a somewhat revised timeline, which makes our budget submittal just 1 week later than originally planned. It will be on January 26th. That should have no impact on the town manager's ability to present her budget, because we will also be involving her along with Dan O'Donnell in formative budget discussions so that they know what we're doing and how we're approaching it as we move toward the development of the budget and not just receiving it at the end. So we want to make sure that everybody is well informed. We are going to do a Budget 101 session for some time this month. Having just finished the vacation week where virtually everyone, I think, was gone because they just needed that time. We'll put that together hopefully sooner rather than later so that the town gets a much better understanding of the who, what, when, where, and why of our budget. And it's just not just random number generation and just incremental budgeting. We look at our priorities from year to year. We want to articulate those priorities clearly in our specific budget meetings. And maybe Ingrid and I were talking today that perhaps we devote a little bit of the off Monday time to budget questions from the public at each of those meetings, or we could have a couple of full budget meetings that could last 2.5, 3 hours with just questions from the community. And that's something I'd like to discuss this Friday with the budget subcommittee. So the advantages and disadvantages to both approaches to that. But So we'll be continuing to map it out, providing you with some written information as we go along, and then that will be sooner rather than later, because it's 26th of January is coming quickly. And, with the understanding, that we're still dealing with great uncertainty, but we're planning on a school year next year that is based on what we've known for many years. And hopefully we'll be back to that point. We don't know yet what will be coming from the commissioner's office or from the governor, but, we'll have to be prepared.
Yeah, Ingrid, go ahead before I launch. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to chime in. I think that's why, if it pleases you all, I'd like to give a fiscal update at your next meeting, because like I think we had the same discussion last spring, so much of what we do this year is going to affect next year. And, seeing what kind of opportunities we can have to leverage some of our non-general funds in order to use next year. I think next year will be very challenging financially. So what we do, I think, hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll have a better idea too of what the new stimulus funds might mean to our district. So there are so many moving parts. I think, we just need to, remain flexible and keep asking questions. We did request officially to the Finance Committee that we have, we had informally discussed this already with them, later dates in March, early April for our budget review, because again, I think that was the whole point of advocating for a later town meeting, was really to have the best information we can, as best as we can, to put together an FY22 budget for next year. And keeping in mind, a large part of our discussions right now with leadership and with staff are talking about what we anticipate that our students will need next year. This was, a year that hopefully we'll never have to repeat. And there will be, consequences of that. And those consequences will, have a financial impact as well, and trying to balance all that together.
So I am glad that we do have this extra time. It's amazing that we feel like we have extra time, and it's never as much time as you feel like you would
Right.
want, because nonetheless we are still launching. I guess I would appreciate, just for the benefit of the finance subcommittee's discussions on Friday, and also just as chair for scheduling purposes, what are the thoughts from the committee on how to structure this in terms of our meeting process? Because I think there were weeks and times last year that were extraordinarily challenging, that we would have a regular school committee meeting on Monday. Many of us would try and pop in on the select board meeting on Tuesday, and then we would have a budget meeting on Wednesday, and then maybe stopping by FinCom on Thursday. And it made for quite the challenging week of evenings that, sometimes I wouldn't see my family till Friday night, and they'd be like, "Oh, hi, you still live here." And I think we also need to be conscious of and respectful of our central office staff, that if we're doing multiple late night meetings a week, they've also got work early the next morning. And I'm sure some of those mornings were rough after long budget meetings. So I want to find a way to make it a little more manageable, and for the committee, for our central office staff, and also for our participants. I think we've learned the hard way that super long meetings don't necessarily help the process. They can sometimes be an exercise in frustration after, hour 3 or 4. What is it? Elizabeth Almeida used to say on select board, nothing good happens after 10 o'clock at night, So we do want to structure this in a way that's accessible to the public and that's helpful to the discussion. I personally like the idea of using the alternate Monday nights because I think we already have those carved out in our schedule. It prevents us from maybe having the multiple meetings in a single week. And I think it gives the finance subcommittee and the administration kind of time to react in between our meetings. So we'd kind of be setting up a structure where we'd have our regular meeting on our regular Monday nights, and on the alternate Monday nights, it might be a budget specific meeting where we could really dig into a particular budget topic or two and try and organize that somewhat topically.
I think a schedule was shared with the school committee. Nina had shared something Ingrid had put together. And it gives us, if we do the alternate Mondays, which we discussed at the finance group, the way Ingrid has it laid out right now, it gives us 5 Monday nights that would allow us to discuss just budget in addition to our school committee meetings. I know we had talked about even starting as early as next Monday, but I think we need to hear from Ingrid before we can start talking about budgets. So I appreciate that. The only question I had, Ingrid, on this list was that it says the superintendent presentation to the school committee is on a Tuesday night. Is it supposed to be on Monday, the 25th? You're muted.
That's an error on my part. I apologize.
No, I just want to make sure that.
No, it's supposed to be a Monday.
Okay. And we had talked in the finance group about maybe having one budget meeting before the superintendent presents, but it may not be timing wise that we can squeeze that in. So we can talk about that more on Friday too.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. I'll put it in my notes too.
Yeah, I had the same question, Avery. I had in my notes that we were tentatively thinking about having a meeting next Monday night that would maybe specifically focus on transportation. Obviously, I know there's so many, it's such a complicated topic and there's so many moving components. So Bill and Ingrid, completely defer to you as to whether you would like to initiate that conversation next Monday night, whether you'd like some time to think about that, or whether you feel like you want to push that off until a little later. I think that was really just something that was penciled in as a possibility. So add your option about.
Ingrid, unless you feel differently, I feel prepared to discuss that next Monday night.
Yeah, I think because transportation is such an all-encompassing topic, and because it, if it does involve a change in start times, I think it would be wise to have that conversation earlier than later. Because if we do go to a 4-tier system, that would realize some cost savings and have a very positive effect on the budget. So I would say we wouldn't want to go too far down the budget path without kind of at least having a general consensus of what tier level we are costing out.
Yeah. And what's exciting about that discussion on Monday night also is the ability to incorporate, sleep research and the sequence of arrival of students in the morning into a revised transportation schedule. So we are prepared to address that.
Great, thank you.
Well, I'll make that correction and update the and add that date into the timeline and send that out to everyone.
Great, that's
And
wonderful.
eventually, I'd like this document will go public, and maybe after Friday, when we can sort of put some topics on some of these dates, we can share it with the public as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. I wanted to launch that specific one because I know by the time we would have that discussion on Friday, it would be too late to post for the Monday meeting. So if we are ready to initiate that, because I know it's a complicated topic, I know we've got a couple of documents in our packet tonight, but I don't want to delve too deeply into it because I know it's not, fully an agenda topic for this evening. So and I don't want to open that entire topic, but I think it'd be great if we could start that discussion next Monday night. And I think the public would be happy to hear that. I saw some other hands. Chris.
Yeah, I wanted to know if we could maybe even go a level higher. I feel like above just the logistics of the timing of the scheduling of the meetings, and talk a little bit more about the philosophy, because I feel like after last year, the big lesson learned was we need to not do it this way. And I don't think, I'm not saying we are, but it kind of feels like I haven't heard anything that says we're doing it differently other than delaying, shifting it in time or giving ourselves more time. I think the theme that I heard in the spring and the summer when we talked about budget was coming up with our priorities beforehand, before we have to start making those tough decisions. And I like the way we're talking about transportation, because I think that's a really good illustration of, I think, what we were saying, which is, let's talk about transportation generally, about our priorities and what our options are before we have to make the final decision. And I'm hoping we can do that in a number of areas. I know the Finance Subcommittee came with high-level priorities in the fall, early fall, that we all said these are good, but they're so high level that they're not going to necessarily dictate this versus this spending. So I guess I'm throwing it out there as a question, which is, how do we foresee the next few weeks playing out such that we can have those higher level conversations about what does our budget mean to us before we have to look at actual numbers and have to start putting those tough choices out there to the public.
What I'm writing right now, Chris, and other members of the committee, is sort of an executive summary of your priorities, what the strategic plan has provided to us in terms of direction, the school improvement plans that were presented recently by the principals, discussions with the teachers, to present a picture to you of what we feel the priorities are from the constituencies that are and have been providing budget input. I'm glad to hear you say that we're not going to do what we did last year again, because last year was the first year that I've been here that we were told, here's the number, here's what you have to meet. This current upcoming budget, the 22 budget, is going to go back to, here are our priorities. Here's what we think is necessary to meet our current and emerging needs. Here's the rationale and the data to support that. And then how do we get to eventually a number that we're going to have to get to in terms of analyzing the priorities and trade-offs?
But Bill, I have a big concern in, we often had program decisions clumped in with budget decisions, and they need to totally be decoupled. If we want to evaluate a program because we think it's at the end of its life or it needs a change, I need that to happen not in the midst of, we're doing this because we need to save $500,000. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do and we save $500,000.
Right. And we plan to do that, Avery. It's just, we're going to look at what is the benefit to students?
Right.
Is it sustainable? And then go from there in terms of, honestly, at every point, we're going to have to look at a cost benefit analysis. And so we will talk thoroughly and more thoroughly about programmatic issues, and not just, well, here's something that we can cut. That's $500,000 and, we're on our way to meeting the town manager's appropriation. So it's important that we go into more depth in terms of your understanding of what the impact is.
Are you going to still give us the tiered cut lists like we did the last couple of years?
I anticipate taking that same approach. I thought that worked pretty well.
I saw other.
Bill, if I can just follow up, Bill mentioned, an executive summary that takes in, a number of factors, but one was school committee priorities. And I guess I'm wondering, what's the mechanism by which the school committee deliberates and communicates those high level priorities? Is that through the finance subcommittee? Or is that
Well,
in one of our open meetings?
I think a combination, because I think it's important for the public to hear those discussions. So that, we can kind of set the agendas in the finance subcommittee, but I think it's important to have discussions, as long as we don't really get into people's names. But we need to talk on a little bit broader scale in terms of what are all the pieces to the puzzle here: elementary, middle, high school, preschool, kindergarten. I think it's very important that we have all of those discussions in a public forum.
Finance subcommittee has certainly been wrestling with this and has been trying to address exactly what you're raising, Chris, about how do we, improve upon the process for last year. And I think part of it is in the framing of we've been discussing kind of having, the budget 101 kind of ground, like just basic understanding of how our budget intersects with the town budget. And I think sometimes last year, the public would get very focused on one budget change and didn't necessarily have the full context sometimes of how the entire budget works together. So I think we are trying to start from that ground floor of having everyone hopefully be on the same page and having that broader context of understanding of all of the components of the school budget and how it gets formed. And then also trying to have more helpful, productive conversations with the public about when there are specific budget changes in one area. So I think we also want to set some ground rules for how those discussions are going to take place in a way that incorporates that public input, but does so in a productive conversation. So having those dedicated budget topic meetings will also hopefully help with that. Let me get in some other perspectives here because I'm seeing other hands. Alicia.
So I will go ahead and email everyone. I want to read a document that was worked on collaboratively between district leadership and the CPAC from last year, involving how we discuss certain financial topics as they relate to special education. We did have a few years in a row where we had some comments that were very off the cuff and upsetting to special education parents. And again, collaboratively, the district and the CPAC worked together to create a document that talked about how we approach these discussions respectfully and how we set up conversations that do not pit one group against another. So I will make sure that I send that to everyone again this week, just so that we all have it again. I know most of us were here last year. Valerie, I'm sure you saw it. It was part of, a public meeting packet, but I want to make sure that we're looking at that as we move forward as well.
Other hand, Valerie.
I don't want to belabor it, and I think both your comments and Chris' comments and Avery comments are kind of talking about this, but since it's new this year, I guess I'm just not clear what role the finance subcommittee has during these weekly meetings. If I was, I know I'm not allowed at those, but if I was a parent, what kind of topics are being talked about there? Are they the details and stuff? Can you just talk more about what you envision those meetings covering for the next kind of during this these Monday meetings timeline?
Do you talking about the finance subcommittee meetings themselves or the weekly meetings?
No, I know that, right. So these Monday night meetings that we're talking about would be public, not that the subcommittee meetings aren't public, but would be the full committee, and we're talking about either a budget topic or we're trying to get through our business. And so during that timeline, if finance subcommittee is still meeting, what would kind of pull audience there? What kind of conversations maybe you could just talk about what kind of conversations you see happening ongoing in that subcommittee?
The alternative Mondays I see as an opportunity to break down different topics. Like last year, we had a lot of discussion about language and those kind of things. So we want to break it down so that people know that on a given Monday, we're going to talk about some of the items that are specifically targeted in the superintendent's budget decisions. And so we might talk about language changes or athletic changes, or whatever some of the changes that we're going to have to make for the budget. We want to make sure we have time to discuss them completely and understand, most importantly, why the administration felt that that was the best budget decision for that area.
Right. I think that part I get, because that's the full committee, right?
Yeah.
It's the subcommittee. I'm curious what you envision the subcommittee doing for the next 2 months, like what kind of topics they'll be covering. Like, is that
similar topics? We are just able to drill down a little bit further and maybe get a bit of a preview and how we might see the following Mondays and sort of try to prep, so to speak, for the following topic.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry if I took the roundabout way to get there.
No, I misunderstood.
Yeah. No, I was going to answer along the same lines, that I do think that the finance subcommittee is trying to just take some time to discuss the process, and is having kind of the prep and the proactive planning for, okay, what are we going to need for, like, we'll be discussing this Friday, for example. So what do we need for that meeting on Monday? Do we have everything? Is there other information that the committee or the public would find helpful for that meeting on Monday? Just to try and make sure we're all on the same page, so that that meeting that we do have on Monday night discussing transportation and its impact on the budget can be the most productive it can be. So I think we're really just trying to lay some groundwork and do some legwork to help support the process. But we wouldn't be talking about completely different topics, but really the preparation along the way.
Yeah, we're really trying to help with process and procedure.
Yep.
I think that's what Ingrid's main ask of us was.
Ingrid?
Yeah, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but the subcommittee was never meant to replace the full committee, and it's really important for us as staff too in putting together the budget to hear everyone's voice. But I think particularly as we're trying to improve the process, the subcommittee is invaluable to provide some direction there.
Yeah, absolutely. Subcommittee will not be making budget decisions. That is the purview of the entire committee. Absolutely. In terms of public input, I also have an apology and a circle back. There was a public comment that my screen hadn't refreshed, but it is budget related. It was from a community member who did want to comment that they appreciated the work that's being discussed about live synchronous instruction, referring back to Dr. Cleary's earlier comments on that. And also in regards to budget, I'll just read the comment as is. I hope the 21-22 budget is structured in a manner to address the educational needs of students at the lower elementary level. It is very concerning that Westford seems to be putting early elementary students' needs on the back burner in the past few years from a funding standpoint, such as cutting pre-first, still no free full day K for all, and less K instructional time this year compared to other grade levels. Many districts are increasing supports for lower elementary students, including moving to bringing K students back in for more in-person learning in order to offset gaps created by the pandemic and move to hybrid remote learning. I hope that Westford is also planning to address these inevitable needs and that the budget reflects an increase in supports. So I apologize for not getting to that comment earlier, but I did want to share it with the public and the full committee about that public comment in support of a recognition and concern that I think we did hear last year from a number of community members that over the last several years, maybe budget reductions have taken a toll at the elementary level. So I think that there will be a discussion we need to have at our next, upcoming budget meetings. I don't know if anyone else had a comment or response to that at this time. Are there any additional comments about this planning process? I know we'll have further discussions on the process at our finance subcommittee meeting on Friday, and it looks like we will be having a discussion about specific transportation impact and how that may impact the FY22 budget next Monday night. But anything else FY22 related? If not, then we'll zip back to our current year, and we're going to discuss some a bus discussion in terms of fees and offsets, and also WA parking.
I know we have Jim Antonelli here with us, but Ingrid, I'm going to address this because I think our plan is to not assess at this point in time additional fees for either school bus transportation or parking. And Ingrid, I'll turn it over to you if you want.
Sure. I know in early December, we included a memo in your packet outlining the financials of our bus. We were able to decrease the number of buses to realize some savings, and taking into account that we still are in the hybrid model, and the students are only attending school every other week live, that perhaps it would be respectful for everyone's hardships as well, to stay right now with the fee as people paid in the fall, and reserving the right, if we change and to a model where the students are back in school in a larger number, and we need to add and or bus capacity changes, that we would then reevaluate the fee. I think right now, the way, and again, it does require then cleaning out the transportation revolving account, which is over 200. Sorry, I have to flip my screen to pull up the memo again. That we would take about $245,000 out of the revolving account to offset our lost revenue. Again, we don't know also if the stimulus bill will allow us to replace lost revenue. We're just going to have to see what parameters they put on those grants that they give us, and how much it is. I think the consensus that we at least are recommending is that we stay put right now with the fee. It's very taxing on families to have to then pay again, and for us then to reissue bus passes so that we have a different pass if we go back out. So there's that cost as well, which is kind of a soft cost, but time is money as well, as we all know. Happy to answer.
Yeah, thank you for that update. I know there was so much uncertainty really at the beginning of this school year, so that really for the bus fee and the WA parking fee, we said, well, this is going to be the current fee and that we would reassess at the mid-year, and here's our mid-year reassessment. I would assume, not to collapse the discussions, but is the recommendation the same on WA parking, or is there a differing recommendation on the WA parking fee?
No, that's will be our recommendation as well. Again, because the students are only live, on the campus every other week. And keep in mind, last year the decision, that was made to go from a $50 parking pass to a $200. This year, the students have already paid $100, so it's already an increase from last year. That said, just to be, perfectly, put my, permanent finance hat on here, we did build a budget that had a $50,000 offset from parking fees, and we have a 650 approximately bus offset. So that's all money that we didn't receive. We have received $34,000 in parking fees. So that more than covers definitely the direct costs of the parking, including the traffic person. That those wages are paid out of that account as well.
Questions from the committee? So, okay, Avery.
I heard the word spend down the revolving account.
It's the only way we can afford it without asking for more fees.
So we're talking about the people who've paid $100 for a bus fee for the first half of the year wouldn't have to pay a second $100 for the second half of the year.
That's our recommendation.
Okay, and we are spending down completely the revolving account, or like to zero? Pretty much.
Pretty much.
Yep.
So that's a risk, and that's why it has to be a discussion of your full committee. So.
That's one of the harmful effects of this year, is that our ability to leverage our position from one fiscal year to the next and maintain consistency has been seriously impacted.
So to further clarify, so what the recommendation is the fee that was paid at the beginning of the year. If a family paid a bus fee at the beginning of the year, we said there might be an additional assessment. Your current recommendation is we don't make an additional assessment, and instead we'll be spending down whatever is in the current revolving account. But if, let's say, someone didn't buy a bus pass at the beginning of the year because they were driving their student or they were on RLA, maybe they're now switching hybrid, or maybe their family situation has changed and they do want a bus pass. So if someone is adding a bus pass, they would pay
the full amount.
The fee that was assessed at the beginning of the year. Okay.
Yeah, we don't prorate the bus fee.
Yeah. One of the reasons why we put a purchasing hold on also is just to make sure that we can compensate as much as possible for some of the impact that we've sustained this year.
No, absolutely. If we charge, an additional $100 or $150, that would help the bottom line. We were also just trying to be cognizant that, the families are experiencing, equal economic hardship this year.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. I think I'll echo if I heard a little nervousness in Avery's voice. Paying, spending down that revolving account when we know that we are having, and perhaps in this sense, maybe we hold where we are now. It sounds like you're not asking for a vote. You're recommending that we hold where we are now. So perhaps we're holding where we are now. I know we're having a transportation discussion about next Monday. So I think it would help me feel better about coming to this conclusion to not charge any additional fees for this year, to have that broader understanding of, would that hamstring us in any way about what we might want to pursue for next year. So, I think I have faith and I trust in the recommendations for now, and we'll have some broader context next Monday that I think will help too.
Well, I think that was the point of tonight's discussion, was at this point. I mean, it's the first day back after break, in the sense that we really do need to see what are the COVID numbers, what, I think, everyone, of course, wants to have more students in the schools, but, safely. But, we would have to change our current transportation model as well if more students come in. So again, it's all that juggling. So I think, sorry if it sounded final, it's really at this point.
Got it. I appreciate that. We have to update the adage from last year, and we now have to say 2021 subject to change. I think that, barring any other questions, it sounds like that's a reasonable place to stay for now. I appreciate the update, and we'll just let families know to stay tuned, depending on how things evolve. Other questions? Am I seeing any of their hands?
Oh.
Okay, yes.
I just, also just to, no, I don't know what's the right word, be fair. Mm-hmm. I think if I could respectfully ask that we do make a decision then by late January, early February, though, one way or the other, just so that the public does know and that we can plan financially.
Absolutely, makes total sense, and I think will certainly be an easier more final determination, I guess, to make once we have that additional time and that discussion next week, and we get a little further into this month. I think that'll help a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other business before we move on to warrants? Are we at the warrant point? If we are, I'll turn it on to Julie.
Question. In our school scenario times, were we going to even open that Pandora's box tonight, or was that just a sort of an FYI in our packet?
Just an FYI.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks for that final clarification. And Alicia.
Okay, motion to approve payroll warrant 2128 SP dated January 7th of 2021 in the amount of $2,026,430.05.
Second.
Thank you. Vote to Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
Aye. So that is unanimous.
Motion to approve expense warrant 2128 SE dated January 7th, 2021 in the amount of $406,022.25.
Second.
And vote to Avery. Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. And I don't believe we have any minutes this evening. And we don't have a personnel update this evening. Correct? Okay.
That's correct.
Next week or next time, do we think, Bill?
Right, personnel update?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we will have that at our next meeting, and I believe there was one. If anyone from the public is still with us, there was one at our last meeting, it initially wasn't in the packet, but it was added to that packet. So you can go back to the December 21 meeting and see that personnel update from December. And final motion of the evening to Alicia.
Motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss strategy with respect to Unit A collective bargaining in an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position. The committee will not return to public session.
Second.
And all in favor, roll call. Avery.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Alicia.
Aye.
Ming Chen.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Valerie.
Aye.
And aye. So that is unanimous. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Happy New Year. Stay healthy. And we will see you back next Monday night for a discussion on transportation and its impact on the FY22 budget. And then we will see you in 2 weeks, actually 2 weeks plus a day, because of the Martin Luther King holiday. Our next regular business meeting will be January 19th, Tuesday evening. So take care, everyone, and we will not return to public session, but we will see you soon.